welcome to another Coffee with Colm, and thank you for joining me. You've heard of Murphy's Law for sure. Murphy's Law states that if anything can go wrong, it will. And of course, I'm sure, like me, you've experienced that in your life, and I'm sure, like me, you will again. Then there's Smith's Law, which I particularly enjoy, which basically says that Murphy was an optimist. I really like that. I came across something during the week called the Falkland Rule. Now, as it happens, I was planning to discuss my topic today, which is no decision is a decision. And then as fate would have it, the universe conspired that something came into one of my social media feeds, which basically alluded to a thing called the Falkland Law or Falklands Law or the Falkland Rule. And it basically says, let me just read it here for you. It says that when it is not necessary to make a decision, it is necessary not to make a decision. I'll read that one more time. When it is not necessary to make a decision, it is necessary not to make a decision. Now, that's not quite where I was planning to go with this idea that no decision is a decision, but we can touch on that in just a moment. So my original intention was to talk about the fact that no decision, if you've got something in your life that you're weighing up, A or B, X or Y, and you can't decide whether A or B, X or Y, well, then that lack of decision or indecision or decision not to make a decision is in fact itself a decision, if that makes sense. No decision is a decision. I remember a friend many years ago was emigrating, and I remember asking this person, when are you heading? And the response was, oh, I haven't filled in my visa application yet. And so I said, you've decided not to go? And they were a bit offended. And they said, no, it's not, we've decided not to go. We just haven't filled in our application. And I said, well, if you haven't filled in your application, well, then there's nobody processing your application. You will only have a decision as to whether you want to go or not go once the relevant embassy comes back and says, you've been accepted. So by not making a decision to send in the application in the first instance, in itself was a decision not to apply, if that makes sense. So no decision is a decision. If you find yourself realizing that you should decide A or B, X or Y, well then by not deciding A or B, X or Y, you are accepting things as they are now. You're accepting the current status quo, whatever that might be. We've spoken about this before in terms of, for example, making a phone call. You want to make a phone call to progress your business or to invite somebody out or to apply for a job or to perhaps, audition for a part in a play or a movie. And you don't make the phone call. And you don't make the phone call for whatever reason, but by not making the phone call, your fate in relation to that particular issue is decided. You don't make that call to that prospect. The answer is no. You don't make that call to that person you want to invite out for dinner, and the answer therefore is no. You don't make that phone call to find out about that job or that part in the play or the movie, and the answer is no. You do step forward and decide to make that phone call or send that email or write that letter. What might the answer be? We don't know. It could be yes, it could be no. But without making the phone call or sending that letter or that email, the answer is always no. Wayne Gretzky said many years ago, Wayne Gretzky is a Hall of Famer ice hockey player from Canada, and he's famous for being top of his game, number one. That's why he's a Hall of Famer. But, he said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. It makes perfect sense. All of the greats in sport, those people who scored the most tries or the most points or the most goals or the most whatever, have also been the people who've failed the most times because they simply took more shots than their competitors in those sports. So they failed more often. They missed more shots than anybody else in the game because they took more shots. But as a result of taking more shots, they simply scored more goals, made more points, etc., won more games effectively. So no decision is a decision. And that Falkland Rule is an interesting take on this. So I hope I've made my point about no decision being a decision. No decision is you don't take a shot, and therefore by default you're accepting the status quo. The Falkland rule that popped into my feed during the week said, if it is not necessary to make a decision, it is necessary not to make a decision. And that's a very interesting take on this idea. So it's not necessary to make a decision today on something. Well, then I think I would probably agree with the Falkland rule. Then it is necessary to not make a decision. And I think over the years, I've become quite good at parking stuff until such time as it is imperative that a decision get made. Now, don't confuse that with procrastination. Many of us suffer from procrastination for whatever reason. But at times, it's often useful to let a series of events play out before you have to make a decision. And that could be in relation to any aspect of your life. It could be in relation to career, it could be in relation to your business, it could be in relation to work, to relationships, to your health, perhaps. So, there is a difference between no decision is a decision, and if it is not necessary to make a decision, then it is necessary to not make a decision. There's a difference between those two. It's nuanced, but there's a difference. And I would ask that you would consider that nuanced difference in the next week or so. So there you go. No decision is a decision. Murphy says that if anything can go wrong, it will. Smith says Murphy was an optimist. And the Falkland rule that we've just learned, at least I've just learned, says that if it is not necessary to make a decision, well, then it is necessary to not make a decision. I'll let you consider all of that in the next few days, and look forward to seeing you here again next week. So thank you for joining me for this week's Coffee with Colm. I hope and trust, as ever, you got something from it. Please, please, please consider what's been shared here today and apply it into your thinking for this next week. And then, very importantly, come back next week and we will share another coffee together and we'll ruminate on some other aspect of life and business. Between now and then, get some great coffee for sure. Get some fresh air, get some R&R. If you spend too much time with people, I recommend you take some time out and get to know yourself. Spend a little time alone. Conversely, if you spend too much time alone, I recommend you go out and meet some people. And then when the time is right, and only when the time is right, get your head back in the game, get organized for the week ahead, get stuck in, make next week count, make a decision, don't make a decision. Remember, no decision is a decision. And I'll see you here this time next week for another Coffee with Colm. Sláinte. I love great coffee. Talk to you soon. Take care. Bye for now.